have to listen to me carefully. I'm on a plane that's been hijacked. I'm on the plane. I'm calling from the plane. I want to tell you I love you. Please tell my children that I love them very much. And I'm so sorry, babe. I hope to be able to see your face again, baby. I love you. Bye.
The World Trade Center, tower number 1 is on fire. Send every available ambulance, everything you got to the World Trade Center now.
How could single day change the history? At 8:46 a.m., the first of 4 planes crashed into the North Tower of the World Trade Center in New York. It was the first sign that something terrible was happening. The attacks that followed were so big that they shocked everyone, not just because of the damage, but also because so many people died. The attacks were carefully planned and brutally executed by members of Al-Qaeda, a terrorist group led by Osama bin Laden. But these were not just attacks on famous buildings, they were attacks on the very spirit of freedom, unity, and humanity. 4 commercial airplanes were taken that morning. These planes were filled with regular people, families, business travelers, and crew members, unaware of the nearing danger they were about to face. The attackers on board were members of Al-Qaeda, each with a specific mission: to turn these planes into weapons of mass destruction. The first to be taken over was American Airlines Flight 11, which left from Boston's Logan International Airport, heading for Los Angeles. But about 15 minutes into the flight, the attackers, led by Mohammed Atta, took control. The communication between the pilots and air traffic control cut off, leaving confusion on the ground. What was initially viewed as a mechanical failure or a minor problem quickly grew when the plane moved off course, going toward New York City. At the same time, United Airlines Flight 175, also en route from Boston to Los Angeles, was captured by another group of hijackers. With exact coordination, these terrorists controlled the crew and passengers, taking full control of the airplane. By the time air traffic managers understood what was happening, it was too late. The planes were already pointed at their deadly targets. Then came American Airlines Flight 77, leaving from Washington Dulles International Airport, headed for Los Angeles. This plane was taken shortly after takeoff, with its trajectory turned toward Washington, D.C. And finally, United Airlines Flight 93, headed for San Francisco from Newark International Airport, was captured. But something different happened on this flight, something that changed the story completely. As passengers on Flight 93 learned about the attacks in New York and Washington through phone calls with loved ones, they understood their plane was also part of the plan. In an act of great bravery, the passengers joined together and pushed back. The attackers' plan to crash the plane into a symbolic target, possibly the White House or the Capitol, was foiled. The plane crashed into a field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, but the courage shown that day stopped a bigger loss of life. On September 11, 2001, things happened so quickly that no one had time to fully understand how terrible things were. At 8:46 a.m., Flight 11 crashed into the North Tower of the World Trade Center. The effect was disastrous. The nose of the plane struck the 93rd through 99th floors, quickly killing hundreds of people. Those stuck in the floors above faced an unimaginable scenario. With all stairwells and lifts wrecked, their chances of escape were slim. 17 minutes later, at 9:03 a.m., Flight 175 plowed into the South Tower. The blast was even more deadly. Eyewitnesses on the ground and around the world watching live news on television were horrified to discover this was an organized terror attack. In a matter of minutes, New York had become a war zone. But it didn't end there. At 9:37 a.m., American Airlines Flight 77 crashed into the western side of the Pentagon, the icon of America's military power. Flames consumed the building, killing 125 military troops and civilians, as well as everyone on board the plane. The nation's capital was now under attack, adding to the overwhelming sense of danger that spread across the country. At 10:03 a.m., United Flight 93, the hijacked plane from Newark, fell into the rural scenery of Pennsylvania. Though the loss of life was tragic, the passengers' efforts prevented what could have been another tragic attack on a national symbol. The world was shocked to see the towers that made up New York's skyline on fire. A huge cloud of smoke and flames rose from the upper floors, shocking everyone. At 9:59 a.m., though, the unthinkable happened. The South Tower fell. There was a wave of dust, steel, and debris through the streets of Lower Manhattan for only 10 seconds after the 110-story building fell. The fall buried thousands of people, including hundreds of rescue workers who had rushed in to help. After less than 30 minutes, at 10:28 a.m., the North Tower came next. The Twin Towers, which were once famous, were now just a mass of burning rubble. Everyone in the city could barely breathe or see more than a few feet in front of them because of the thick cloud of dust and smoke. A short time ago, the streets were full of people and activity. Now, they were empty, chaotic, and scary. Thousands of people were running for their lives, while others stood frozen in shock, watching the towers fall into dust. In the hours that followed, the true scale of the destruction began to appear. The entire world was in shock. Nearly 3,000 people had lost their lives, and many more suffered injuries. The streets of New York were covered with rubble, personal items, and the remains of the Twin Towers. First responders, building workers, and volunteers from across the country came together in a frantic attempt to find survivors. For days and weeks, they sorted through the rubble, but the chances of finding anyone alive grew less with each passing hour. The effects of 9/11 extended far beyond the destruction of buildings. The entire country was left distraught, looking for answers, and the sense of safety many had taken for granted was broken. In airports across the country, security was tightened. In the days that followed, air traffic came to a stop, and no plane flew over American skies for the first time in history. The country was now on high alert, uncertain if more attacks would follow. The words of those who survived the attacks provide a personal and haunting look into that day. Survivors, first responders, and witnesses remember times of total terror, courage, and sadness. One firefighter reported running up the stairs of the North Tower, helping as many people as he could. "We didn't think twice, we just ran in," he said. But as he climbed higher, the building fell. Miraculously, he survived, though many of his friends did not. A survivor on the 78th story of the South Tower described feeling the structure shake as the second jet hit. "I was thrown to the ground," she remembered. "When I looked up, all I could see was black smoke and fire. I thought, this is it." She, along with other people, managed to escape just minutes before the tower fell. Family members of the dead also shared their stories. Some spoke of the last phone calls they got, tearful goodbyes, and the painful hours spent hoping their loved ones would be found living. One man remembered his brother's final words from Flight 93. "We're going to do something. We can't just sit here." Those people made a choice that saved countless lives, but their sacrifice will never be forgotten. To understand why 9/11 happened, we need to look at the greater geopolitical environment. The attack's roots date back to the late 20th century, particularly the 1980s Soviet-Afghan War. It was during this time that Osama bin Laden, a rich Saudi Arabian, founded Al-Qaeda, a militant Islamist group that would later become responsible for the most deadly terrorist attack in modern history. Bin Laden's anger toward the United States grew during the 1990s, fueled by the US military's position in Saudi Arabia and its backing of Israel. In 1998, bin Laden released a fatwa stating it was the duty of Muslims to kill Americans, whether soldiers or citizens. The seeds of 9/11 were set long before that deadly day, with smaller-scale attacks foreshadowing the bigger scale of violence to come. The 1993 bombing of the World Trade Center and the 1998 blasts of US embassies in East Africa were warning signs that terrorism was becoming a global danger. 9/11 wasn't just an attack on America. It was an attack on the entire world. It changed how we live, how we move, how we view security, and how countries work to fight terrorism. The scars of that day run deep, and for many, the pain has never fully healed. Yet, amidst the sadness, there were endless acts of bravery, sacrifice, and unity. The heroism shown by first responders, the strength of survivors, and the kindness of people around the world who came together to support one another stand as proof to the unbreakable human spirit. In the face of evil, the world did not fall. It joined. As we think of the events of September 11, 2001, we remember not just the loss and damage, but the strength and solidarity that rose from the ashes. The impact of 9/11 continues to shape the world today, telling us of the weakness of peace and the lasting power of hope.